Coming up next.
It's important to get your tech side, like get your science, get those things that are sort of building blocks for this industry. But I definitely would suggest business course. Business courses, sort of time management, budgeting, all those are important.
The Job Talk podcast shares stories from people who are passionate and love what they do in their careers. Through conversation, we explore their careers, past work experiences, and the education that got them to where they are now. We are putting together a Career Crisis Ultimate interview series. We are asking experts to give their best advice and guidance around work anxiety, career pressures, career goal setting, and ultimately career transformation. To learn more about this special interview series and get notified when it's available, please visit our webpage at thejobtalk.com/help.
Today's guest is Ryan Muri. Here's our Job Talk with an environmental professional. Just to get things started, I'm kind of curious, what is your actual job title?
My actual job title is Vice President of Regulatory and Compliance Monitoring. So it's a mouthful. What it actually means is I help facilitate two sides of our business. One is for the regulatory piece, so applications, proponents and clients want to put a new building in, a new project in, we help all the paperwork. And the compliance side is once they're up and operational, we help them do the maintenance. So if there's a PIA, Alberta Environment Requirements for monitoring, we support those programs as well.
Okay, this sounds complicated, and I'm going to be very curious to explain how you got into that position. But I want to take you back to your post-secondary, and I understand you were a hockey player and you were attending university. Is that correct?
Yeah, I played a year at Augustana out at Camrose. I played a year there and took the first 2 years of my undergrad in Camrose. So the 1 year was very busy juggling hockey and school for sure.
And how did you find that, taking post-secondary courses and you were a goalie on a very high level of hockey?
Yeah, so it's hard. It's a hard schedule. We were on the ice 4 or 5 days a week, I believe. But the school is nice in setting a schedule up so you can maintain the ability to get your practice and your schoolwork done. So typically most players, instead of taking a full course load of 5, they took 3 to 4 courses. So most athletes, or at least when I was at university, took 4.5 or 5 years to get a 4-year degree if they played sports for the full 4 years.
Was your career ever looking like there was a chance for being a professional hockey player?
No, not really. I think if it ever got close, it would have actually been after university when I was playing senior hockey. I played some senior hockey in the Chinook League, they call it, the AAA Senior League. And at that time, there was a lot of those pro leagues popping up all over the U.S., and they were often looking for players interested in making $300 a week American, riding on a bus. But I never quite made that cut either.
Were you considering it, do you think?
No, I don't think so. No. It was,
okay.
Wasn't interested in going to Amarillo, Texas to play hockey.
Go see the world, play hockey.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you're taking what program were you taking at university?
So when I started out in Camrose, I took general sciences.
Yeah.
And then when I went to university and transferred to U of A, where I graduated, the one that was most interesting to me was the environmental and conservation sciences. So that would be things like your wildlife sciences, your soil science, vegetation ecology, so more of the soft sciences. That was sort of the gist of that program, learning environmental regulations in Alberta and Canada, contaminated sites management. So it was sort of a precursor to getting into being an environmental professional.
I'm always curious about industries like the one that you went into, because when you're a kid, you're not thinking that one day I'm going to be an environmental professional. I have a friend that's in insurance, and he said it was basically the last booth at a career fair that he came across. Yeah. So why do you think you chose to go into environmental sciences?
That's a great question. So one of the things that intrigued me is when I was growing up, I grew up in an area with a lot of oil and gas activity. And so a lot of neighbors, friends, family friends, they were in that industry, whether it be on the operational side, so drilling wells, the finance, accounting side. There's a lot of people we knew in that oil and gas industry. And I was lucky enough in high school to have a summer job that I was working up at a place called Swan Hills. It's a little town an hour and a half from where I grew up. and it's an oil town. And so I got some exposure working at a gas plant. Actually, of all things, I learned quite a bit about that industry. And then the other big piece about it is I like being outdoors. So the industry I'm in, there's a ton of field work, a ton of opportunity to see all sorts of places in Canada, to collect data, to write reports. And so that was interesting to me, is to be outside. You're on ATVs, Argos. That was really actually a big draw for me too, being outside. And also, it sounds cheesy, but I did like the idea of environmental protection and those sorts of things.
And what is the degree when you come out of university?
So Kim, it's kind of funny. The degree I have is ENCS, Environmental Conservation Sciences. It's an undergrad in science, but currently, Vertex Professional Services, the company I work in, we recruit from all sorts of colleges, the agriculture colleges, the tech colleges, the NAITS, the SAITs, universities. So anything typically with an agrology, a science, a biology, a forestry background, those are all typically individuals that get into our industry.
Okay. And is it quite intense, the subject matter in obtaining that degree?
Yeah, they can be. Yeah, I would say, it's not engineering, it's not medicine, but because you're taking such a wide breadth of courses, you have to kind of be a jack of all trades on your course load. And
your marks were good coming out of there?
They were okay. Yeah, they were. I got 5. They were all right.
Because we could look into it. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, so you graduate with your degree. Let's talk about your first work experience coming out of post-secondary. What were you doing?
Yeah, well, I can give you the short or the long of it, but
it's a podcast. Let's go long. Let's go long.
So when I graduated, as living in Western Canada, especially in Alberta, many people probably know there's an ebb and flow with oil and gas, and there's booms and busts. It just so happened when I left university, I think I finished in December of 2000, so kind of April 2001. You're looking for work. I ended up in a welding shop. Because there was no jobs I was there for 4 or 5 months. There was no jobs in my field. And I started actually flipping the yellow pages open, looking for anything with the word environmental or consulting in or professional. And I did land a job through the yellow pages, applying for a position with a small firm. And that's how I kind of got my foot in the door. So it was pretty bleak for the first 6 months. Yeah.
I don't think kids watching this will know what the yellow pages are, because there wasn't really much of an internet when we were coming out of school.
No, that's right.
Okay, so you landed in there. What kind of work were you doing once you landed that first job?
Yeah, so it was a great job. I was lucky to get that job. I spent so our industry is really based on weather. When the weather's nice and there's growing conditions, you're out in the field. And in the wintertime, you're writing reports or you're way up in the bush when it's frozen, you can access sites. So the first 6 months I was there, I was probably in the field 95% of the time. When I say the field, a lot of the work I was doing was called detailed site assessments or site inspections. So you go to well sites or other facilities that are already reclaimed, and the client wants to get a rec cert on them, meaning they don't have to pay any more rent to a landowner, for example. And we would do assessments all summer. So I did a lot of that. I did some interesting live mammal trapping. None of them were harmed in the making of that activity. A lot of veg surveys. I learned a lot about vegetation identification. So a lot of field work, both up north, Slave Lake, Fort McMurray, and down south all the way to Oyen. That was in the first 6 months. So there's a lot of diversity, and it was great.
So at this point, are you married yet, or are you a single guy?
We were engaged.
You were engaged?
Yeah.
Okay, because obviously it sounds like you're away from home quite a bit while you're doing this type of field work.
Yeah. There was a lot of 10 days on, 4 days off the first summer. This profession, there's a lot of hours, especially in the field. In the summer, they're usually 12-hour days. So there's a lot of hours to be had, which is great when you're starting out because you want the experience and it's nice on the wallet.
I'm always curious about the wildlife when you're out. So are you using like quads, or are you in 4x4 trucks out in the wilderness? And did you have any experience with bears?
Yeah, actually we have. So the answer to the first part, we take trucks as far as they'll take us. Then you either unload Argos or quads, or now it's side-by-sides. Most companies prefer that you use side-by-sides. They're safer. And we often use helicopters too. actually came a fair bit. So I've had a few projects. We actually helicopter into like a fishing lodge in Northern Alberta, and you stay there, and they fly you out every day to your site, and they fly you back at the end of the day. So I've had some crazy encounters with bears, super scary. I mean, you laugh about them now, but instances where you're in places they haven't seen many humans, so they're more curious. So we used to carry a ton of bear bangers. They're make a big bang and they shoot like a little shell over top of them. We used to carry those quite frequently in bear spray. So you'd often run into them. Most of the time they disappeared. We had a couple that would follow us around, which is a little unnerving. So lots of experiences with that.
And we're talking grizzlies or black bears?
No, black bears.
Okay. I mean, if a bear's attacking you, it doesn't really matter if it's black or grizzly.
No.
Okay. How many years were you with that company and what was your progression? I guess we're trying to work towards what you're doing right now. So I don't really know what happened in between that position and where you are now.
So I stayed at that firm for 12 years, which is a long time in our industry, especially now. A lot of people, look for opportunities after 4 or 5 once they get some experience and have a feel for what they want to do. I was lucky enough that they let me grow quite a bit. I started out doing a ton of field work. So the first 2 or 3 years, I spent a lot of time out in the field, winter and summer. And I had a wide range of projects. I was doing contaminated sites work. So you're actually out behind a drill truck, drilling soil samples, collecting them, sending them to a lab, and then writing a report. And I also did a lot of the sort of softer science stuff. So I got to do a ton of soil surveys. That's sort of the fun stuff. You're in the helicopter on the Argo. I did a bunch of that, a bunch of vegetation ID work. So that was the first 3 to 5 years. Then I kind of specialized actually in the soil science. That's my minor at university, was soil science. So I started doing a lot of those. And at that time, so that's 2007 to 2010 or 11, there was a bunch of activity in Northern Alberta building what they call in situ plants or oil sands projects. So they're large footprints. They required a lot of soil survey, vegetation survey work. So I spent a few years doing a lot of that and slowly progressed into more of a management role of those types of teams. And then when I left that firm, at that time, I was a team leader of a biophysical group. So I kind of oversaw our wildlife teams, our vegetation teams, our soils teams, and our wetland group.
Are you surprised that you ended up in management as a vice president? That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I never thought I would be in a role like this. It's never what I was thinking when I got into this. Hey, that's where I want to be when I grow up as a vice president or a senior leader in a company like this. I actually just thoroughly enjoyed doing the science, the technical side. I always kind of thought I'd stick to the technical side of it. And there's room to grow and lots of opportunities in that facet of the business as well.
I was going to ask, actually, when you're doing the work that you were doing, is it solitary or are you working with a team of people?
When I first started, we did a lot of stuff on our own with little radios. And then, rightfully so, safety became more paramount. So you do most of your work, especially remote work, you do in teams of at least 2. Yeah.
And actually, I think I'm going to back up a little bit. Let's talk about your position now and the company that you're working for.
Yeah, so I'm with Vertex Professional Services. We are Sherwood Park's actually the head office, which is unique. Most consulting firms, the head offices are in Calgary. Our head office and corporate group is in Sherwood Park. We are relatively large. As a company, I believe we're just over 1,200. But we're two groups. We're a Vertex Resource Group. So we also deal with hydrovac trucks, oil field haulers, rental division. And then the group I'm in is called the Professional Services Team. So it's engineering, environment, which I'm involved with, surface land, and that we're one big happy family. But the group that I sort of I'm a part of, we're about 300 people. So we're the smaller of the two groups. I've been with them for 4 years. I started in late 2018 and have just sort of progressed from managing biophysical groups, one of the main reasons that I came on, to sort of spearheading a larger group.
And how are you finding being a manager and in management? Because it's not like you went to business school. You were in science. So how are you finding the management side of things?
I'm learning. always learning. Like you said, I didn't go to business school, and that's one thing I would say to anybody interested in this field. It's important to get your tech side, like get your science, get those things that are sort of building blocks for this industry. But I definitely would suggest business course. Business courses, sort of time management, budgeting, all those are important. So back to your question. I find the people side of it. I think I'm a people person, so I enjoy that component of managing a team, growing a team. I like team sports, and I really think a lot of it's the same sort of idea. It's a team game, if you will, with our group. So I enjoy that atmosphere. So I like dealing with people, making sure people are getting the resources they need to get the work done, seeing people succeed, seeing people promoted. The tricky part is the business, the dollars and the cents is what I'm learning. I have a good senior manager above me that helps out a lot with that. So that's a piece I didn't really pick up till later in my career. And I'm by no stretch am I great at it, but I'm getting better at it.
I would love to talk to you about, like, are you experiencing labor shortages at all within your company? And I'm thinking about the student that's going through environmental sciences right now, what they can start to think about as far as what jobs are out there.
Yeah, Kim, I would put us as an extreme labor shortage in our industry. I don't think I'm exaggerating. We hit a bit of a blip. So COVID, I'm sure you've heard of it. It hit in 2020. And so a lot of our project works almost came to a screeching halt, like everything else did in the world for a few months. And what happened, and this is not proven science, is sort of my interpretation. A lot of people decided to leave this industry and did not come back when things picked up, which actually was only a few months later, things started to get busy again. So you couple that with, there was a lot of funding opportunities from the federal government. They provided industries that we work with money to reclaim and get rid of old well sites. So that jumped up. And then I think things started to turn around and capital projects came back online. So we went from 0 to 100 miles an hour within about 6 or 8 months. And we've been sort of struggling ever since to find qualified staff, anywhere from entry-level positions all the way up to intermediate and senior level. There just isn't enough people in Alberta or Western Canada to go around for the workload that's currently out there.
I mean, you took the initiative to open up the Yellow Pages and just start contacting as many environmental companies as you could. Would you say that would still be a good bit of advice for students, just to start canvassing oil companies, environmental, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say there's a number of associations too. Depending what your interest is, if you're interested in wildlife biology or fish biology or any of those aspects, the Alberta Society of Professional Biologists, ASPB, they have a website with job postings. The CLRA, Canadian Land Reclamation Association. So there's a lot of and they have a job postings site. The Alberta Agrologist, same thing. So a lot of those sort of disciplines have Alberta affiliations with websites. We use, probably like everyone else, we use Indeed a lot. We post on our website. So there is a lot of opportunity. I mean, if you know where to look.
Yeah. All right. When you were in the field, actually, I'm going to ask you a two-part question. When you were in the field, what was what did you love doing the best? What did you look forward to in your day-to-day work when you're out in the field? I
like the outdoors. So this is going to be a two-part answer on that first part of the second part question. I really enjoyed, so when I was out doing soil surveys, there's two types of land you get a chance to walk through. Upland, so nice forested like you see in the movies, and then the swamps, the stuff that's tough to walk through. So if I knew I had a day where I was in an area that was all upland, like aspen or white spruce forest, you could spend the day walking around there, great day. When we got stuck in areas that were full of water, lots of muskeg, you're jumping from piece of dry land to piece of dry land. Those were really long days, and rain. So I like being outdoors, but I'm a bit of a picky with my weather.
And what do you look forward to now that you're in the management side of things?
The day-to-day, what I look forward to is probably if we're able to get some projects, get a new project in-house that excites people. We always say in consulting, if you get to do 40% of stuff you really like to do, 40 that's indifferent, and 20 you don't like to do, that's a pretty good career. So when we get that 40% of interesting projects come in, or we have a success for a client, we get something approved, that's a good day for sure when we get those new opportunities.
All right. I read a half headline once, did not research into anything, but the headline was something, it was speaking to how many orphaned wells there are in our province, and I guess Saskatchewan as well.
Yeah.
Maybe we say Western Canada. I would, from a very naive place, I would suggest that would mean that if you're going into this kind of work, there's going to be a lot of work for a long time for you. Are there a lot of orphaned wells out there that need to be taken care of?
Yeah, there is. I don't know the number, and I don't want to get it recorded if I guess, but there is a significant amount, and it's gone up a lot in the last 5 years. The regulatory requirements are getting more stringent, and companies are required to reduce their liability more and more every year. So it's just, even from a standpoint of non-orphan wells, there's a ton of work coming up in the next decade or 15 years, just in that sector of our industry. I mean, oil and gas is only a part of sort of being an environmental professional. It's a big one in Western Canada, but there's also lots of other avenues: renewables, transmission lines, commercial industrial developments around cities, greenfield and brownfield developments. So I always want to make sure people understand that oil and gas is only a portion of kind of what you can do as an environmental professional. But again, in Western Canada, it's a pretty big one right now.
Ryan, how do you stay up to date on best practices in environmental management?
So most professionals in environmental consulting usually have a designation. That's what you should be shooting towards, is getting a designation, a professional sign-off, they call it. And part of having that is an annual requirement to do professional development or contribute to. So you have to do so many hours of professional development annually to maintain your designation. And so most of us, we look for career fairs, conferences, online learning. Actually, if you're also teaching or doing some other things to augment your skill set, those all count towards it. So many of us do those sorts of activities to try and maintain and get enough points, if you will, to keep the designation, which is a great idea. It keeps everybody up to speed. Everybody's up to on the current regulations, and it's a good habit.
So continuous learning, lifelong learning.
Yeah.
I like that. What is the best advice you could give to that student that's graduating with their degree in environmental sciences, entering the work world?
I would say be open to doing any sort of field work. Don't be closed-minded and say, I only want to do X and Y. I think the more and the different types of work you're exposed to and opportunities early on in your career, it's great, because then you learn right away what you like to do and what you don't like to do. I was lucky enough to have that opportunity to do soup to nuts in the first 6 to 16 months I was there. And I learned real quick what was my passion and things I could leave, not really want to deal with. And I would suggest that be open-minded. Don't just look for one type of role, and take as much field work as you can get. Don't be turning that down. I think that's invaluable. It just makes you a better professional when you get to a position where you're actually building budgets and you're doing programs. You understand what it takes to execute the work. So that's that would be my biggest suggestion for people getting into the industry.
It almost seems like you would be building a resume for maybe a future as a politician. Have you ever considered going into politics?
Never. No. Sorry, Kim. That takes a special kind of person.
Okay. Maybe that is an avenue for some people. Anytime that you can pick a career that involves helicopter rides and the possibility of bear attacks, you've picked an exciting profession. So yes. Congrats on that, Ryan. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Job Talk podcast. For more information, please visit us at thejobtalk.com. Our podcast music was created by our friend Mike Malone in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.